She was a queen who commanded armies, financed explorers, and shaped the destiny of a nation. But beneath her crown lay a ruthless ambition and a faith so unyielding it terrified her subjects. From forcing thousands from their homes to wielding fear as a weapon, Isabella of Castile was a monarch whose decisions would haunt Spain for centuries. How did this devout queen rise to power, and why do historians still debate whether she was a visionary or a tyrant? In this story, we uncover the dark secrets behind the crown of one of history's most formidable women. The year was 1451, and in the modest town of Madrigal de las Altas Torres, a baby girl was born who would one day change the fate of Spain forever. Isabella was her name, the daughter of King John II of Castile. From the moment she drew her first breath, her life was destined to be anything but ordinary. Yet few could have guessed that this fragile infant would grow into a ruler whose determination, devout faith, and unyielding will would earn both admiration and fear across the land. Isabella's early years were marked by political turbulence. Castile was a kingdom riddled with rival factions, noble families constantly scheming for power, and a royal lineage tangled with conflict. Her father's death when she was young left the throne in question, and Isabella quickly learned that survival in the world of kings and queens demanded far more than beauty or charm. It required cunning, patience, and a mind sharpened like a sword. Even as a child, Isabella displayed signs of the iron will that would define her reign. Tutors marveled at her intelligence and her capacity for memorizing complex laws and religious texts. She was devout from an early age, spending hours in prayer and meditation, a trait that would later shape every decision she made as queen. But alongside her piety, there was an undeniable ambition. Isabella did not dream of playing the role of a passive royal figure, content to merely appear in public ceremonies or decorate the court. She wanted influence. She wanted control. As she grew, Isabella faced repeated challenges to her claim to the throne. Her cousin Henry IV of Castile, known for his unpredictable temper and weak leadership, attempted to sideline her, while powerful nobles schemed to manipulate the line of succession. These early political battles hardened Isabella, teaching her the importance of alliances, strategy, and above all, ruthlessness. She began cultivating relationships that would serve her later in life. Loyal supporters who shared her vision for a unified Castile, willing to follow her even through the darkest of decisions. By the time she reached adulthood, Isabella's reputation was already forming. Whispers of her intellect, her fiery temper, and her unshakable determination spread through the corridors of power. She was a queen in the making, someone who would not bend easily to pressure, bribe, or persuasion. But alongside this growing influence lay a darker aspect of her character. Her faith, deep and uncompromising, began to intertwine with her sense of justice in a way that would later make her both revered and feared. She believed that her mission was divinely guided, that she was chosen to protect and purify her kingdom in the name of God, a belief that would soon lead her to the controversial actions that would define her rule. By the time Isabella ascended to the throne, she was no longer the vulnerable girl of Madrigal. She had transformed into a formidable force, armed with intelligence, unyielding ambition, and a strict moral code shaped by her faith. Her rise was complete, but little did Spain know that beneath the regal exterior of this devout queen lay a ruler capable of both extraordinary accomplishments and terrifying decisions. By 1474, Isabella's long struggle for legitimacy and recognition culminated in her ascension to the throne of Castile. But the crown she inherited was far from secure. Spain was a patchwork of feuding nobles, divided loyalties, and centuries-old rivalries. Some welcomed her as a unifying force, while others saw her as a threat to their influence. Isabella knew that ruling Castile would require more than diplomacy. It would demand iron determination, shrewd political strategy, and, when necessary, ruthless action. Isabella's first challenge was securing her claim against those who still supported her half-brother, Henry IV. Rebellions flared across the kingdom, and factions vied for control. The queen moved swiftly, showing a mix of cunning diplomacy and unflinching severity. She strategically married Ferdinand of Aragon in 1469. forming a powerful alliance that would not only strengthen her claim, but also unite two of Spain's most influential kingdoms. Their marriage, however, was far from a love story. It was a calculated political maneuver, a move that sent shockwaves through Europe and cemented her reputation as a ruler who prioritized power and strategy above all else. Beyond political maneuvering, Isabella was already demonstrating the qualities that would make her both respected and feared. She imposed strict standards of governance, demanding loyalty and punishing corruption without hesitation. Nobles who opposed her or resisted her authority faced fines, exile, or worse. Her court became a place where decisions were guided by her unyielding moral code, informed by her intense Catholic faith. Even minor acts of disobedience were not overlooked. Isabella believed that obedience to the crown and to God were inseparable. But her religious devotion was not merely symbolic. She was determined to unify Spain under one faith, a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. Her focus on religious conformity began with her court, where she ensured that all advisors and officials shared her beliefs and were loyal to her vision. She funded churches, monasteries, and religious institutions, using them as instruments of both spiritual guidance and political control. Her faith became a tool of governance, shaping laws, policies, and even the daily lives of her subjects. At the same time, Isabella's personality left little room for compromise. She was meticulous, calculating, and deeply cautious of anyone who might challenge her authority. Those who underestimated her quickly learned that her quiet demeanor could hide an unrelenting and sometimes terrifying determination. Her rise to power had taught her that mercy was often a weakness, and that survival in the brutal world of medieval politics required decisiveness, strategic vision, and occasionally fear. By the end of these early years, Isabella had established herself as more than a queen. She was a force of nature. Her reputation spread beyond the borders of Castile. Europe watched the rise of a monarch whose intelligence, ambition, and unflinching faith promised both prosperity and strict discipline. Yet beneath the grandeur and determination lay a ruler whose decisions would soon plunge Spain into controversy and leave a legacy that would be debated for centuries. Isabella had ascended the throne, but the true test of her power and her darker impulses was only beginning. By the late 1470s, Isabella's rule had consolidated power, and she turned her attention to a goal that would define her reign: religious unity. Isabella believed that a strong, unified Spain could only exist under one faith, Catholicism. But this vision came with a harsh, unrelenting approach. Any hint of disloyalty, heresy, or deviation from Catholic doctrine would not be tolerated. Her determination to purify the kingdom would soon plunge Spain into an era of fear that left its mark for generations. In 1478, Isabella and Ferdinand obtained papal approval to establish the Spanish Inquisition. On paper, it was meant to identify and root out heretics, especially Jews and Muslims, who had converted to Christianity but were suspected of secretly practicing their old faith. In reality, it became a powerful instrument of control, both religious and political. The Inquisition empowered loyal clerics and officials to investigate, accuse, and punish anyone suspected of disloyalty. Accusations could be based on rumor, envy, or personal grudges, meaning that fear and suspicion spread through every corner of the kingdom. The methods used were terrifying. Torture was sanctioned as a tool to extract confessions, and those found guilty could face imprisonment, fines, public humiliation, or execution. Even minor infractions could result in harsh penalties. Families were often torn apart, reputations destroyed, and lives ended in the name of faith. Yet Isabella viewed these actions not as cruelty, but as divine duty. She believed that enforcing orthodoxy was essential for the survival of her kingdom, and that God had chosen her to carry out this sacred task. The Inquisition also served political purposes. Nobles who opposed her authority could be accused of heresy, giving Isabella a way to remove threats under the guise of religious justice. Wealthy converts from Judaism or Islam, known as conversos, were under constant scrutiny, their assets and positions vulnerable to seizure. By intertwining religion with governance, Isabella ensured that loyalty to the crown and loyalty to the faith were inseparable. The impact on everyday life was profound. Fear permeated towns and villages, as even casual comments or actions could be interpreted as signs of heresy. Many chose to leave Spain rather than risk persecution, while others were forced to live double lives, outwardly practicing Christianity while hiding their original faith. The sense of dread Isabella created was so pervasive that it would echo for generations, leaving an indelible mark on Spanish society and history. Through it all, Isabella remained steadfast, convinced of her righteousness. To her, the ends justified the means, a united, devout Spain under her guidance. But while her ambition and faith brought stability and strength, it also earned her a reputation as a ruler, willing to wield fear and cruelty to achieve her vision. By the end of this chapter of her life, Isabella had shown that she was not just a queen, but a formidable force whose unyielding will would shape the destiny of an entire nation, often at a terrible cost. By 1492, Isabella's vision of a united Spain under Catholicism reached a defining moment. The same year, Christopher Columbus set sail for the New World under her sponsorship. Isabella issued one of the most consequential and controversial decrees of her reign, the Edict of Expulsion. Every Jew in Castile and Aragon was now forced to choose: convert to Christianity or leave the country within a few months. The decision ripped families apart, destroyed communities, and forever altered the social and economic landscape of Spain. The expulsions were not merely administrative, they were deeply personal. Jews who had lived in Spain for generations were suddenly branded outsiders, their homes seized and their livelihoods stripped away. Many fled with whatever they could carry, embarking on dangerous journeys into foreign lands. Others reluctantly converted, adopting Christianity outwardly while secretly preserving their old beliefs. Isabella, unwavering in her conviction, saw this as a necessary step to purify her kingdom. In her mind, the spiritual unity of Spain justified the immense human suffering that accompanied her decree. But the Queen's strict moral and religious code extended beyond religious minorities. Isabella imposed rigorous standards of behavior across her realm. Nobles were expected to uphold the highest moral standards, and even minor offenses could result in severe punishment. Her court was governed with meticulous attention to detail. Nothing escaped her notice. Courtiers, officials, and even common citizens lived under the shadow of scrutiny. To Isabella, discipline and obedience were synonymous with piety and loyalty, and she wielded her authority with an unflinching hand. The human cost of her policies was staggering. Families were torn from their homes, communities were fractured, and fear permeated daily life. Yet Isabella's supporters argued that her measures strengthened the kingdom, creating a unified Spain capable of resisting foreign influence and internal division. She was admired for her decisiveness and feared for her relentless pursuit of control. The Queen's determination to shape Spain according to her vision left little room for compromise, mercy, or dissent. Even amidst these sweeping, harsh measures, Isabella maintained her personal image of piety and devotion. She funded churches, convents, and monasteries, reinforcing her image as a queen guided by divine purpose. Her advisors, nobles and citizens alike, came to understand that loyalty to Isabella meant loyalty to both her crown and her faith. Any challenge to her authority or her moral code was swiftly and often ruthlessly suppressed. By the end of this period, Isabella had solidified her legacy as a ruler of immense power, unshakable conviction, and profound influence. But with every act of unity imposed through fear, every community displaced, and every life disrupted, the darker side of her reign became more apparent. Isabella was not merely a monarch shaping her kingdom. She was a force whose decisions would haunt generations, earning both admiration and infamy. In her quest for a devout and orderly Spain, she had achieved greatness, but at a cost that would be remembered for centuries. As Isabella entered the final years of her reign, her reputation had become legendary, both revered and feared. She had transformed Spain into a powerful, centralized kingdom, strengthened through marriage, diplomacy, and religious unity. Yet the methods she employed, the relentless scrutiny, the expulsions, and the fear instilled by the Spanish Inquisition, left a shadow that would follow her name for centuries. Isabella's story is not one of gentle benevolence. It is a story of determination, conviction, and the complex interplay between faith, power, and human cost. Despite her strict rule, Isabella was admired for her intelligence and vision. She was a shrewd patron of exploration and education, financing voyages like Christopher Columbus's journey that would open Spain to the New World. She sponsored scholars, encouraged the arts, and invested in institutions that would shape Spanish society. Her ambition extended beyond mere politics. She sought to leave a lasting imprint on the world, and in this she succeeded. The prosperity and influence of Spain during and after her reign owe much to her foresight and unyielding drive. But behind the grandeur of her accomplishments lay a darker reality. The thousands affected by the Inquisition, the Jews and Muslims forced to abandon their homes, and the nobles disciplined or eliminated for challenging her authority were part of the price she demanded for unity. Isabella's legacy is one of contrast, extraordinary achievements shadowed by acts of cruelty and uncompromising zeal. Her unwavering faith and moral code, while inspiring to some, became instruments of fear and control for others. Even in her final years, Isabella remained devoted to her vision. She ruled with an intensity that few could match, constantly monitoring her kingdom and ensuring her policies were enforced. Her personal habits, strict routines, and deep religious devotion reflected the same meticulous discipline she demanded of her subjects. She never wavered in her belief that her actions were divinely guided, a mandate to secure the strength and purity of her nation. When Isabella died in 1504, Spain mourned the loss of a monarch who had reshaped its destiny. Her passing marked the end of an era, a reign defined by ambition, faith, and power. History remembers her as both a visionary ruler and a figure of controversy, a queen whose decisions were as transformative as they were terrifying. Isabella of Castile's life is a testament to the complexities of power, the ability to inspire and terrify, to create and destroy, to unify and dominate. Her story reminds us that greatness often comes with shadows, and that the line between devotion and ruthlessness can be as thin as the crown she wore. Centuries later, historians, storytellers, and audiences continue to debate Isabella's legacy. Was she a devout visionary queen who strengthened Spain for generations to come, or a ruthless ruler whose moral absolutism caused immense suffering? Perhaps she was both. The truth lies in the fire and faith with which she ruled, a queen whose ambition and devotion changed the course of history, leaving a mark that would never fade. Queen Isabella of Castile left a legacy that still divides opinion centuries later. She united Spain, sponsored voyages that would change the world, and ruled with intelligence and vision. But her reign came at a terrifying cost. Thousands lived in fear under the Inquisition, families were torn apart by her edicts, and her unyielding ambition reshaped the lives of countless people. Isabella's story is a reminder that power, faith, and conviction can inspire greatness, but they can also leave scars that echo through history. She was a queen who shaped an empire, commanded respect, and instilled fear, a ruler whose name would never be forgotten.